How can you write off your travel as a business expense? I'm going to go over the 3 things that you need to have to make sure that you can deduct your travel as a business expense on your tax return. If you'll notice, this is not my normal office. This is not my normal view. I am in Colorado Springs for the Superstores Writers Conference. I'm speaking to authors about taxes, about growing their business. And so I figured since I was traveling this week, it'd be a great opportunity to talk about travel expenses. Also, I'm a little bit annoyed that I'm just using my phone camera and this wireless mic, and I feel like it's just as good, if not better, than the setup that I have in my office. Kind of annoying. But what's going on with travel expenses? I've been seeing lately a lot of posts from these tax influencers talking about how the wealthy don't take vacations, they take business trips, or the wealthy don't go on family vacations, they have board meetings or things like that. And the implication is if you go on a family vacation and you just call it a board meeting and you say that your family is your board of directors, then you can write the entire thing off as a business expense. Now, one thing you're going to notice from these types of influencers is that they typically don't actually sell tax preparation. Instead, they're selling a course or a community or something else because they're not going to ever put themselves liable for putting something like that on a tax return because they know it's total BS. And I started seeing it with like Grant Cardone, and then a few weeks later, I started seeing almost the exact same post from other people. So I don't know if it's just that it's people who follow him and they copy what he does, or if he has some sort of community where he gives out the advice and says, here, go post this. But regardless, it's not correct. So I want to give you the actual information on how to actually deduct travel as a business expense on your tax return. The first thing you need to write off your travel is an actual business purpose for the travel. You have to have a business reason for traveling. And there have actually been court cases where the tax court has disallowed certain travel overseas because they said that the company could have done the same thing in the United States or even virtually, and they didn't justify the cost of going overseas. So keep in mind, the more expensive the travel that you do, the more justifiable reason you have to have for it being necessary for your business. I see a lot of times authors wanting to deduct research expenses and travel for research purposes because they get ideas while they travel, or they use the experience of traveling in the descriptions of their books. It might be okay if you can very clearly document that you went to this specific location to get this specific perspective to put in a book somewhere, and you can actually draw the experience or the notes that you took from the research to the actual book and where it ended up in your novel. But you can't just say, well, my character went to Disney World in my book, and so I took the family to Disney World because I had to experience that for myself. That wouldn't cut it. The IRS would say that the main reason for going to this trip was a family vacation, and that you also got some business use out of it. So again, thing 1, the travel has to have a specific business purpose. Number 2, when you're traveling, that travel has to primarily be business related. What does that mean? If you go on a business trip, if you go to a conference or you do a legitimate research trip, it's okay if while you're there, you do a couple of personal things. Even if you go a day early, stay a day late, you cannot write off those personal days, and you cannot write off the expenses for personal things, but you can still write off the business related days, and you can still write off the travel there and the travel back. However, if you go on a family trip somewhere for, let's say, like 2 or 3 weeks, and while you're on that family trip, you decide you're going to go to this one-day conference or do this one business meeting or something like that, then the primary purpose of the trip wasn't business related, even if you did business there. The primary purpose of the trip was personal, and so it negates all of it. You can actually get into trouble. You could have a situation where you go to a conference or you go to some sort of business travel, but you extend the travel so much and do so much personal stuff on that trip that it could actually make the entire thing non-deductible. So make sure if you're wanting to deduct business travel that you have your primary business purpose and that the travel itself has to primarily be for business purposes. Third, you have to have good documentation, and this goes for anything that you're wanting to write off on your taxes. You need to have documentation that proves why this was business purpose or business related. And it's really important that you show that anything you did personally on that trip, you separated out and did not try to deduct those along with all the business related things. So for example, if you go to a writer's conference like the one that I'm at now, if you have a brochure or some sort of agenda or some sort of thing that shows the dates of the conference and what it's for and the agenda and the description and can show that that relates to your business, you need that. You need receipts for the plane tickets, for the hotel, and for the meals on the days of the conference. But if you choose to go to the conference a couple of days early or stay a couple of days late and do some personal things, or you do some personal things while you're here, you go to the spa, you do other things, then each of those expenses needs to be separated out and not deducted because those are personal expenses. Again, the most important thing whenever you're writing something off is having the documentation, because the burden of proof is on you, the taxpayer, to prove to the IRS, if they were to ever ask, why this was necessary and ordinary for your business. I know we've talked about travel a few different times in different videos on this channel. It's just one of those areas that is just so abused in the tax code, and it is just so easy for the IRS to audit that one line that says travel, knowing that you probably didn't keep good documentation. That'd be really easy for them to get tax money back from that. And there's just so much bad advice going around when it comes specifically to travel, because it looks a lot better if I were to do a video that said, write off every family vacation for the rest of your life and travel for free on the IRS's dime. That would get way more clicks and views than saying, you can't necessarily write off your family vacations, you can only write off actual business trips. But because I care more about following the tax law and making sure that you don't get audited than I care about getting clicks and views, I'm just gonna continue giving you the real information, the stuff that's gonna keep you out of tax jail and make sure that you understand what's allowed and what's not allowed. By the way, me being at this conference to speak at this conference makes the conference a business expense. But if I was here for personal reasons, or I was just on a family vacation and I decided while I was here to record a video about deductible travel, recording that video, even with the hotel room in the background, would not make it a business trip and would not make that day even remotely deductible. The whole thing would still be a family vacation. So again, just because you do something on the trip that's business related doesn't make the trip business related and does not make the trip deductible. If you have seen something online that you just think sounds too good to be true, or you think that maybe you're being misled, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to do more videos like this responding to stuff like that, and I will see you next time.